Hello, this is Brett Bendistis. Welcome to Bluebook Crash Course. This is a lecture series to go over to make Bluebook citations easier, not easy. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about unreported Bluebook citations. Now, unreported Bluebook citations are not that complicated in the context of everything else we've doing. Meaning, if you've been able to master reported citations, Bluebook citations, unreported citations are exactly the same with just a few smart, practical nuances, right? So one of the things we're going to do first, going back over some slides we've already covered. We're going to talk full citation form, longer citation form, shorter citation form. So we're going to talk a little bit about the idea of the first time we use something, second time we use something, third time we use something. It is the same, right? So whenever we're citing the same thing we just cited, those rules are going to stay the same. And the other rules are pretty comparable, right? So again, we're going to have three citation forms, even though it's a different, the cases are located differently, but those three things are going to be the same thing that we're using here. Now, the difference between reported and unreported citations practically in the year 2025, when this is going to get recorded, is nothing for the most part, right? Meaning that like when I started practicing law 20 years ago, unreported citations had like a negative connotation. And I believe when you think about like before Westlaw and Lexis came around, the idea that a case wouldn't be found in any reported book usually meant that that case was less important than the ones that were reported. So I think the idea, and again, this is before I practiced law, so I'm extrapolating a little bit, is that an unreported case was just seen as being something that maybe wasn't as important and shouldn't be used. Now, because of Westlaw and Lexis, all cases are available online. So an unreported case doesn't have a negative connotation. Sure, a West reporter is still like fancier, like we covered in the last version, but unreported cases should absolutely be used and are probably going to be the most common citation form that you use. Probably more likely to use this than anything else. Now, the abbreviation form for this is also based on a lot of the ideas that happened previously, meaning that the unreported Bluebook citation rules are still kind of commonly based on concepts that were before it became more ubiquitous. So I want you to think about the idea of why we do certain things the way that we're doing them are based in some modern practicality, but also sort of some older versions of maybe how we used cases previously. Now, the unreported citation form, from this case, this is a caption that came from Lexis, is right, it's the third entry in the reporter section. So you see 87 NJ 163, that's the state reporter, 432 A.2D 890, that is the West reporter, and then you see 1981 NJ Lexis 1668 is the third one. Now, that third version, the third one in the middle, is the one we're going to be using today. Now, the Westlaw citation form also has unreported versions, and it's a little bit different. You'll see the Westlaw one has the year, the court abbreviation, and then a randomly generated number at the end. Cool. The Westlaw version usually has a year, WL, and then a longer randomly generated number. The key thing I want to note about both of these, and this is really important, I want you to like put whatever you're doing down, look me like straight in my beady little eyes, and I want you to remember that like you're never abbreviating those ever. You're never taking anything out, you're never cutting anything out of there. That absolutely has to always be that version. So if you're cutting out the 1981 because it appears later, don't do that. You're cutting out the year or the court abbreviation. Do not do that. That has to stay the same. 1981 NJ Lexis 1668 does not get edited under any version of any citation form. Cool, you're not editing anything. You're either using it or you're not, but I cannot stress that enough how important that is in the context of the law. Right now, if we talk a little bit about the organization of everything, I want to note that the name of the parties is exactly the same. The name of the parties does not change. It's still humans and non-humans, right? Haynes and First National State Bank, nothing changes there. So that stays exactly the same. The difference is that the Westlaw and database number takes the place of the reported information. So instead of 432 A.2D 890, you just put the 1981 NJ Lexis 1668 in there, right in that second section. So again, I still think 1, 2, and 3 is important, but the biggest change is that the reporter information has to be lifted and it cannot change exactly. Now for pinpoint citations, what you're going to do is put a comma at the end of the randomly generated number, at with a lowercase a, and then the number. Now, page numbers are a little bit different with Lexis, and this is kind of, or unreported citations, and this is where I want to bring up how to look at the bracketed pages that you see before. Okay, now, This is a paragraph from the Haynes case, and there are 3 different bracketed numbers connotating different page numbers. You'll see up on the, I think, 5th line, there's a bracket 893, and there's 2 asterisks in front of it. 2 lines down, you'll see a bracket with 1 asterisk, 179, and then 5 from the bottom, there's bracketed with 3 asterisks, that's 23. Now, each of those 3 connotate the start of a new page number, meaning that 893 is the start of that page number, 179 is the start of that page number, and 23 is the start of that page number. How do you know which one's which? 2 different ways to do it. One is that you see the 1 asterisk by the state reporter, 2 asterisks by the West reporter, 3 asterisks by the unreported citation. Those asterisks correspond with all of these brackets in exactly the same, meaning that the 1 asterisk for the state is the 1 asterisk in the middle, 179. The 2 asterisks for 893 is for the West reporter, and then the 3 asterisks at the bottom for 23 is the unreported citation form. That's what the easiest way to do it. The other is a bit of deductive reasoning, right? If we look at the West reporter, it starts on page 890. You see that the New Jersey reporter starts on 163. Okay. If the first page number in the reported citation is 890, well, then 893 has to be the answer, right? Because that's the only number that logically follows from the page number. Same thing with 173. 179 has to be that page number because it logically follows. Now with 23, all unreported cases start from 0. They start from 1. I guess they start from 1 and then move from there. So you'll always know it's the unreported citation number because usually it's one of the only ones that starts with like low digits. Now, if in the case you have a reported case that also has low digits, well, then you can tell from the asterisks. However, you'll always know it's an unreported case citation page number because of it's usually lower than the other ones. That one's easy. The other point I want to note is that for unreported cases, the page numbers need an asterisk before the number. So it's at asterisk 23. Now, why do we have that? I believe personally, and I didn't write the blue book, so you can't look at me for this, is that I think that it's the same idea I mentioned before of like you should note the precedential value of your citations. I think that having the asterisk lets someone know that what you were citing was unreported. So it made it just like a little bit easier. Now, is that relevant today? A little bit less so, but I also think that it's a standard rule that we still have. So unreported cases, whenever you have a page number in whatever form, you always want to include the asterisk in to make sure it's there. Now, the only other difference with the unreported citation is that the court abbreviation is the same, but instead of just including the year, you include the full date. So before, we only included 1981. Now we're including July 22nd, 1981. Now, at this point, I want you to look at your tables really quickly. And I would like you to also dog ear page 319, table 12, which is months. So if you have like November or December, it's longer than July. You do also want to abbreviate the month there, right? So your citation form for a full citation form is just right here, right? You've got parties, you have the middle Lexis abbreviation and Westlaw abbreviation, and then you have the court abbreviation and then the date. That's it. Now, I want to note something, a small nuance. There is a hard and fast rule in the Blue Book where after the parties, Haynes versus First National State Bank, sometimes there's a comma. And some jurisdictions want you to include the case number. You see under February 23rd, 1981 argued, July 22nd, 1981 decided, you see A-69, okay? I have found in practice as a practicing lawyer that a lot of unreported jurisdictions don't do that anymore. So instead of having Haynes versus First National State Bank, comma, A-69, comma, and then the unreported citation, if I was citing this in a New Jersey court, I wouldn't include that. So again, for my personal classes, I don't usually do that because I just don't see it in practice. However, if your teacher does require it, just make sure it's done, right? So that's the key. Now you'll see the pinpoint citations here. You see the book abbreviation, comma, at, asterisk, page number. That's included there as well. Also, another thing is that there are certain jurisdictions that would allow you to abbreviate or get rid of the page number in the asterisks. I'm sorry, in the parentheses at the end. I like to include it. I'd rather be duplicative than leave something out. Okay. Now, with the subsequent citation form, the short form, the id's exactly the same. Only the page number gets an asterisk. The difference here is the longer, shorter form. Again, this is the same paragraph. It's the exact same thing I noticed before. But what you see here is Haynes, comma, full unreported citation form, comma, at asterisk page number. The difference is you're still using the first plaintiff, right? But you include the entire unreported citation form and then comma at the individual page number. Again, it adds a little bit of nuance to it. I recognize that. But the key thing I want you to remember is it's always the first plaintiff, with the small caveat I'm about to bring up. And then you also include the full unreported abbreviation. That has to be there. So never abbreviate, whether it's Westlaw, whether it's Lexis, always keep that, and then comma at page number with the asterisks. Now, there's one small thing I want to note with criminal cases, where if you have a criminal case, I had mentioned it's always the first plaintiff in the longer short form. In criminal cases, you're always going to use the defendant's name instead of the Commonwealth or the state or the United States. That way you can distinguish. Again, practically, it's not just Commonwealth, 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 but it's Baker, Bendistis, Kavanaugh, whatever, right? So those are the key things there. Key thing to note with unreported citations is it shouldn't be harder. If anything, it should be easier. The other point I want to note with these is that you're going to see these probably more than anything now. So when you go to unreported cases, I think less, this is extremely anecdotal, but I think there's less reported citations than there used to be. I don't know. That's my feeling. And so I think getting used to this and getting really good at this, I think is a really important just thing to note because you're probably going to see it a lot. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just noting the fact that you're cutting and pasting exactly that unreported citation. You're including asterisks by your page numbers, and you're including the extra date is the only other thing you need to know. So if you've mastered the previous ones, these should sort of come part and parcel and be right there with you. If you have any questions, you can email me. My email address is right here. You can also check out other videos on my YouTube channel. You can check out my podcast called The Citizens Guide to the Supreme Court. We're going to be back with statutes and secondary authority, which are going to be a little bit easier, but a few things to note regarding different parts of the book. Great.